It's a classic challenge that all businesses face. How do I go and build an audience of my customers or my users? And how do I keep them there? And communities are a really, really powerful way of doing this.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Optimal Instinct with Trish. I'm Trish Tagle, a business efficiency expert that helps you get your clients to stay longer, pay more, and refer often with helping team morale. I get you to an action plan in one day instead of after 90 or 120 days. How much is your time? Today we have as our guest Jono Bacon, who is a leading community and collaboration speaker, author, and podcaster. He is the founder of Jono Bacon Consulting, which provides community strategy and execution, workflow, and other services. He previously served as Director of Community at GitHub, Canonical, XPRIZE, and Open Advantage. His clients include Huawei, GitLab, Microsoft, Intel, Google, Sunny Mobile, Deutsche Bank, Santander, HackerOne, Mattermost, SAP, Finos Foundation, the Executive Center, Data World, Creative Commons, and others. That is quite a list. He is the author of People Powered: How Communities Can Supercharge Your Business Brand and Teams, and The Art of Community, a columnist for Forbes and opensource.com. He is the founder, actually, of Community Leadership Summit, a founder of Conversations with Bacon, and co-founder of Bad Voltage. He is an advisor to Alien Vault, Molten, Data World, Mycroft, Open Networking Foundation, and Open Cloud Consortium. Jono is from North Allerton, North Yorkshire in England, and has a thing for gin. Check out his gin map on his website. Wow, you are a busy man.
A bored man, I think is the right way of describing it. So.
All right, so let's get right into this podcast. What is a problem that you solve?
So what I focus on is how do you build really powerful communities? And the problem that solves for most businesses is that they want to have a closer, more value-driven relationship with their audience that builds retention. It's a classic challenge that all businesses face. How do I go and build an audience of my customers or my users? And how do I keep them there? And communities are a really, really powerful way of doing this. And the reason for that is twofold. One is that communities can offer an enormous amount of value. So to give you an example, Salesforce have built a community of over 1 million members, and these people coordinate events and create content and collaborate together. Harley-Davidson have brought together their audience into over 1,700 local user groups around the world. Fitbit have got 1.8 million members in their community, and they don't just talk about Fitbit devices, they talk about how to swim more effectively, how to have the right kind of diet, whether intermittent fasting works well. So communities offer a great experience, as if well designed and well implemented for your customers, but they also generate that value. But the other thing is that we're seeing just a societal move towards communities. Our relationship with brands is changing. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we primarily engaged with companies via their customer support line or their email address. And now generations are growing up and expecting companies and organizations to be invested in their success with their products. So communities are a fantastic way of doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like in the Philippines, over the holidays, I'm over there usually. I see Porsche owners. They get together for breakfast, and then sometimes they go out on the racetrack and they drive around. And there's a lot of networking and obviously exchange of information, not just on the cars, but common interests that the members have. So absolutely, there is definite value in community.
Well, and some of this is just kind of tribal in nature. There's something very satisfying about being around people who you have something in common with. And we see this has happened for hundreds of thousands of years. I mean, we got together into villages because we were stronger together, and we could conserve food and we could hunt together. And the same those psychological principles haven't changed. Our brains haven't had an upgrade in a long time. So, that's one of the reasons that makes this all work so well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So what are the common mistakes that people make when they're trying to solve for that?
It's such a great question, Trish. I think one of the biggest challenges here is that people are just not intentional enough about this, is that you think, oh, I want to have a community. So therefore I'm going to go and, set up a Slack group or register a group on Facebook or set up a forum. And then if we build it, they will come. Well, in many cases, if you build it, they won't come. They'll ignore you and they'll go down the pub. So I think we need to be really intentional about this. The way I look at this and the way I kind of talk about this in my new book, People Powered, is that you first of all need to define the value proposition. What do your members, your prospective members, want to get out of this? And we start with, what do you want them to do? Do you want them to provide support and guidance? Do you want them to organize events? Do you want them to create technology? And then you first of all define the value that they can get out of it, such as they get to meet people, they get to build their skills, they get to grow their network, they get to create content and material that they can put in their resume, they get to solve their immediate problems. And then you design an onboarding experience that gets them to that value as crisply and as quickly, as easily as possible. One of the big mistakes that people make outside of not being intentional about communities is that they spend a ton of money on outreach and events and advertising and writing content and doing social media. And then when people come to their community because they're excited about it, the onboarding sucks and they can't get started very easily. It's a nightmare. So we got to be intentional about that piece, but then intentional about building a journey that when you are new to your community and you're filled with imposter syndrome and you don't really know anyone, you don't have any relationships, you want to give them the right kind of incentives and support and mentoring to move them forward in doing that. The best experiences in the world are crafted journeys. If you go to a great restaurant, from how you get seated to them bringing you water and getting the menu and selecting and get the food coming and it being carefully, not all coming out at once. It's just, that's the best kind of restaurant. Disney have perfected this with their theme parks. Software, the best products in the world have been perfected through the onboarding experience with software. So we need to do the same things with our communities.
So, okay, you've mentioned a lot of things, but what is the number one tip? Like the very beginner tip that you could give a leader, a stakeholder based on, the mistakes that you just mentioned? Yeah.
So the first thing I would do, the cheap and schmucky thing to say here will be, the first thing you do is you go and buy my book, People Powered, and they'll tell you how to do it. But putting that to one side, I think the first thing I would do is I would recommend you, first of all, think about what you want to do in terms of what you see your community looking like and why it can be valuable to your business. And then I first of all start out by saying, what do we want to do in the next year? I call this creating your big rocks, which are your objectives. Because the thing about communities is they are fundamentally cross-functional in nature. If you go and hire one person to run your community and they act as the ambassador, let's say a community manager, or you nominate part of someone's time in your organization, you won't succeed if that person just goes away and creates this in a vacuum. Because community members, they want access to you and access to your colleagues and your teams. So the critical thing here is you need to build a strategy that everybody can see their reflection in. There's a book called Skin in the Game, which talks a lot about this, is that people need to feel like they have their skin in the game, that they're part of something, that they've shaped it. Otherwise, it just doesn't succeed because it's going to require, some marketing pieces. It's going to require some infrastructure to be spun up. So the thing I would always recommend as a starting point is once you have a sense of the community you want to build and who you want to attract, focus on what are the things that we want to deliver this, and what do the deliverables look like, and how do we measure it? And that only has to be, a 3 to 6 page document. When I work with my clients, this is one of the deliverables. And it doesn't end there, because step 2 is going to be breaking that down into all the tactics and how you assign it and measure it and all that kind of program management stuff that's really important. But the first piece is be clear on what those objectives are going to be.
That's fantastic. That's actually really, really fantastic advice, especially the skin in the game, because people want to feel that you're with them. You didn't just put up this group and then, oh, hey, just talk to each other and I'll talk to you. I'll see you later. No.
Yeah, exactly. And I think part of this is that with a lot of the companies I work with, it's companies who say, we see the value of communities. We see it elsewhere. We want some of that for our organization. We see the value of it. And usually the rationale for it is defined either at an executive level or it's at a junior level. It's somebody on the ground who says, we should totally have a community, but my executives aren't bought in, or we have, the executives say we want to do this, but we don't have a strategy in place. You need both. And you need to specify that this is an important part of how we do business in the organization. Company I used to work with as a client, HackerOne, who are one of the most significant security companies in the world right now, their CEO said, everybody here needs to play a role of the community, not just our community team, like engineers, marketing folks, sales. You need to understand our audience and build a relationship with them. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like I said, as more and more social platforms become available, various platforms, not just, typical social ones are available, we should be using this to reach out to our, customers, to people who are interested in our product, people who have the same ideas as we do, in order to precisely, build an audience, build a community that is sort of one mind. And obviously giving different flavors and all that, because, somebody else might have a good idea here and there, but definitely, bringing people with like-minded together.
Yeah, it's really critical. And you mentioned, like what free resources can help with this. I've actually put a bunch of templates on my website for how to do this. If you go to jonobacon.com/resources, there's all kinds of things in there from, how do you craft your audience personas to your big rocks and other pieces too. That might help.
Yeah, so we'll definitely put that in the show notes. And for the last question, what should I have asked you that I did not?
So I think probably the most prescient question right now that a lot of people have been asking me in some other interviews has been, how is this whole coronavirus going to impact this? And the way I would respond to that is, a lot of people have been asked to work from home. And some people are very comfortable with this. Like, I've been working from home for my entire career with the exception of 2 years. So I'm a veteran at this. I'm used to this. But if you're not used to this, like one of my best friends sells life insurance and he's not used to this, and it's just weird. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to start seeing more and more people understanding the value of online collaboration. But that raises a challenge, which is going to be, what is the balance between in-office and in-person collaboration and discussion, such as meetings, and the online piece? And whenever I've worked with companies previously, either as clients or when I've worked full-time for them, balancing those two elements has been very complicated. Because, for example, you might sit in a meeting and have a really good discussion in a meeting room. It's very difficult for anyone outside of that room who are dialed in to feel part of that discussion. It just generally sucks.
Yes.
But secondly, rarely are those conclusions documented in a place that people outside the room can easily consume. So I think when you are able to bridge that in-person and online world very carefully together, and I think there's a lot of opportunity there, there's enormous value in that. But I think what's also going to happen is, by far, the easiest way to scale a community is to do it online. Because if you do only in person, and there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of local communities, knitting circles and Alcoholics Anonymous groups and, interest groups, special interest groups, there's loads of them that just meet in a church hall or a community center for a short period of time every week or so, or every 2 weeks. But the way to scale it is online. And so I think the familiarity and the normality of that online collaboration is going to make communities not only more amenable to people, but in more demand too.
Yeah. That is for sure. This event, I'm going to call it, this event that we're facing right now worldwide, I think is going to change the way businesses do business.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's obviously going to be some negative elements of this. I mean, people are suffering and the economy is going to take a good kick to the spuds, but I think there are going to be some benefits that will come out of this.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it was so great to have you on as a guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Trish. It was a pleasure.
Yes, this was great. And maybe I'll have you on again.
I'd love to. Thanks again, Trish.
Your map will have more stars.
Oh, yeah. The gym map.
It's a good one. I'm telling you, people, you got to go to his website and look for the gym map, besides the resources that he does offer. So again, thank you very much. And I'll talk to you again.
Thanks, Trish.
Thank you very much for joining us on Optimal Instinct with Trish. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, head on over to iTunes, subscribe, and if you really enjoy the content, leave us a well-appreciated review. If you are looking to create an environment that partners your desire for more profitable, more productive, and greater referability in client relationships, combined with sustained team morale, then I suggest you head over to clientvaluedemo.com to learn more about the C's value model. Talk soon.